There comes a time in the role of any gamer that you encounter a game that tends to defy expectations and genre. It doesn't quite want to fit in with its contemporaries. And the true magic of a game like that is the fact that when you step back and you're done with it, you scratch your head and you're just like, what did I just play? There are several things that I've seen before that have given that head-scratching moment. The movie Brazil by Terry Gilliam, Metropolis by Fritz Lang, and 2001 A Space Odyssey was definitely weird, especially the giant space baby moment. And it's giant space baby moments that really pique my interest, so to speak. One of the games that I'm going to discuss with you today is Off. It's an independent game produced in 2008 using RPG Maker 2003 by a gentleman by the name of Mortis Ghost. It became popularized in 2011 when it finally hit the States and was translated. So that being said, I want to talk about today, with you, my audience, the meaning behind the game Off. The game is very deep, very complicated, and has some very odd, strange imagery to it. But I myself am strange and unusual. So without further ado, I want to dive into Off. One more thing. The game is never given an official release. It wanders around the internet like a ghost, and you can't necessarily find it as it hides behind shadows and walls. In order to fully understand the discussion of the meaning of the game Off, you're going to need to play it. So you're either going to have to find it, or you can watch the full playthrough on my channel that I have provided for you. Spoilers. From the moment you boot up the game, you are asked to give yourself a name and define who you are. It looks like you are going to be held responsible for the actions of our protagonist, simply known as the Batter. By continuing, you agree to take him on his quest to purify the land, whatever that means. You are joined by the Judge, an overly wordy cat with an overly toothy grin. While not participating directly, the Judge will be with you the whole of your travels. In one form or another, you're going to find out later. The Batter's goal, and therefore your goal, is to purify the world. What that means and how you're going to go about that are left vague intentionally. Zone 0 is a tutorial zone, and there's not a huge amount of exposition. You're introduced to the Judge, the Batter, and some basic puzzle mechanics. And then you're sent out into the nothingness. Leaving a zone returns you to the nothingness, a land which only allows you access to the other zones. There's nothing here except for the whispers of many, many people, all swarming together into a cacophonous din. Upon entering Zone 1, we are introduced to the denizens of this world. A short, pale people who all look the same and simultaneously all have a bad case of asthma. The reason for this is that they breathe smoke from what they call the smoke mines. Mining the ground, they free trapped smoke so they can breathe, the first element they needed to live, which is odd because most people don't live on smoke. After a quick chat with the Judge, we're introduced to our next character. His name is Alpha. He is a featureless, free-floating ring with no defining characteristics, save for his moveset, which is somehow based on chains. Further in, we are brought to the metal farms. Here, we're told that cattle is raised with the purpose of extracting metals that are then used to produce items, while the refuse is placed to the ground and turned to what they walk on. Metal from meat. Not the best way of doing things, but okay. After clearing some specters in a barn, we see our first antagonist, a tall man by the name of Dedan. While in charge of Zone 1, he seems to have a love-hate relationship with it, loving the world he's in charge of while hating its denizens. The Batter then goes on to say that Dedan is a specter and must be purified, so he goes back into the mines to follow him. At the end of the mines, we meet an important character in that of Zachary, the game's shopkeeper and fourth wall breaker. He appears to have a cross on his chest and wears a surgical mask. His fourth wall breaking does ask the question, is this a game? Considering how it calls you, the player, out on several occasions? No, it's not. The next area is called Sachihata,
a massive complex of seemingly infinite floors where workers send letters off to receive packages of plastic, one of the world's elements. Each worker states a code in the form of a number and then a stamp number as well. The plastic they receive then makes up the various objects of the world, but more importantly, its borders. After all, if it wasn't for the endless rivers of liquid plastic, we would just walk on forever. It's here that we're first introduced to the concept of the burnt, denizens that have seemingly lost their head, as is visualized by their battle art. A burnt will become violent and attack even his fellow denizens. They are often seen beside specters, so we can assume they are on the same side. Both specters and the burnt seem to not be evil so much as they are destructive. After all, through the whole of the game, the specters nor the burnt are given any motivation nor any source to their origins. There is speculation in the game, such as the Guardian of the Second Zone controlling them, but the books in the library, as well as the character dialogue, seems to refute this. At the end of this zone is our first real encounter with Dedan. He can kill specters just as the batter. This implies that they are the same kind of entity, and he hates them just as much as the batter does. Dedan thinks the batter sent the specters, but the batter clarifies his purpose as a purifier. One death threat later and we're on our way to the next area. The final area that contains the zone's guardian, Dedan, is Alma. And Alma is full of meat! Another element that without which there'd be nothing to, eat. Or vote in, apparently. I would like to note the horrifying effect of ASMR of continuously moving flesh beneath the tallow. I'm a vegan now. A few quick puzzles and we're on our way to fight Dedan. The fight does not do much to improve the story, but defeating Dedan does purify the zone and place you back into the nothingness. At the end of the zone, we're showed a deep red room with a young child in it. All the child says is, that started badly. A foreshadowing event of the future. Zone 2, otherwise called Bismarck, is a massive library with a shopping center, an amusement park, and a residential area. The denizens at the desk let us know that the library too is full of specters, and that some of the books on the specter-infested floors have been torn apart. The books are worn, incomplete, and out of order. Straining to read, you can see some of this world's history, albeit in pieces. The history that we learn of this world is this. The Queen is the ruler of this world. She set forth 3 guardians to build and run this land. First was a man of metal. The second was a great firebird. And the third was a giant. Each ruler is spoken of in good light, as if their subjects were happy with them and they were kind. The real situation seems to be far from the truth, with the guardians being angry, malevolent, and tyrannical beings. Rather than having been written as if it was a truth or history, it seems to be written in the form of a myth or a fairy tale. There is also a book in which is scribbled the words, "I am running out of oxygen." That's odd. I thought the denizens said they breathe smoke. Fix the books and we're given access to the upper floors where we meet yet another cat. As the batter states, this is not the judge. This is Japhet, the creator of this zone, or at least its library. Japhet says he's the one in control of the specters, that they were sent to him by the Queen. This is the opposite of Dedan and later Enoch, where the specters are wild and unwelcome. In a fight with Japhet, he attempts to call the specters to his aid, of which he fails, blaming the batter for interfering. Defeating him causes him to run and open the shopping mall area. It also introduces us to another add-on, Omega. He's a rough and tumble, no-nonsense kind of guy with a deep, rich story. He's a floating circle, devoid of any characteristics, save for his moveset, which seems to have something to do with camera techniques. I think. I'm not sure, I'm reaching for that one here. Outside, we see the judge, who tells us that the shopping mall is beset by specters and we should probably do something about that. At the mall, we see our friend, Zachary, who runs this mall. At the end of the mall, we find the judge again. This time, he's looking for his brother, who lives on top of the library. Further in, there's a button to call a pedalo. This particular swan boat is, however, called to the other end of the zone, leading to the amusement park. The environment here is important to note, as the amusement park is a dull, muted place where, even though the attractions are an empty experience, the denizens are still terrified to partake of them. The The roller coaster, in particular, is just a row of stationary chairs on the ground, and still, the citizens are afraid to even sit on it. The brightly saturated pink color of the area is a garish contrast to the world outside. As strange as this world has been, the park is by far the strangest, almost forced in, meant to amuse but not in any way in danger. In the area to the right, there is a pedalo and a switch that opens the real and abandoned roller coaster. At the top of the roller coaster, there is a statue of Zachary that can be placed on the coaster beside the batter. Riding it takes a picture that a denizen will then give you upon exiting. The denizen also congratulates you on riding the roller coaster with the park's creator and owner. Taking the picture to the pedalo area will also grant you access to the boss's office, and again, the denizen guarding the door confirms Zachary is indeed the one who runs the park. It seems that Zachary has some secrets. Finally, there is a balloon popping game. Win and force the poor denizen to have a breakdown and become burnt. This grants you a tie that, when worn, gives you access to the residential district. Having killed the burnt citizen, the park patrons now begin to panic, saying there are specters in the park. There are none. No matter how much you walk around, you never encounter a specter. There seems to be no distinction between the burnt and the specters. Interesting. In the residential area, Japhet is angry with the denizens because they are playing the I can't see you game that my sister would use to torment me when I was 5. Or is it that the denizens truly only see a cat? Japhet tells them that they are blind from their fear of living. The dead amusement park will attest to that. And now, the one thing I can't explain. Japhet summons specters. He summons them to kill the denizens who are disrespecting him. He was unable to do this before, and the other guardians can't control them and find them to be dangerous. It could be that the specters showed up out of sheer luck, but it sure looks like Japhet is connected to it in some way. But since we cannot confirm anything else about the specters, I'm going to have to say it was chance. Afterward, even though he was the one who saved them, the denizens have him removed because he could be a danger to them. Again, it would seem that the denizens live a life motivated by fear. Once out of the area, the judge is back. It would seem that his brother, Valerie, has lost himself and is calling himself Japhet. It's no stretch to see that Japhet and Valerie are the same person. The judge and the batter make their way to the top of the library to confront Japhet/Valerie, and wouldn't you know it, it's just as I expected. Japhet is a bird that took over Valerie's body after having choked on him. Okay, so there is a bird, Japhet, in control of a dead cat that failed to eat him. That's like having rolled a d20 and having the die explode on impact that your luck is so bad. The ensuing battle with Japhet has him breaking free of his cat prison until there is nothing left of poor Valerie but a dangling corpse on Japhet's head. As someone who has cats, this impacts me deeply, but hey, it's just a video game, right? The fight ends with Japhet battered and broken on the roof of the library, no doubt regretting what brought him to this place. He knew what he did, knew that he was not a god, just a sinner that wanted something better for his people. The screen goes black, and again we see the Red Room and Child. The bird, he left too. So the batter moves from the nothingness to Zone 3. Zone 3 is an industrial district as portrayed by the large smokestacks that greet the batter on his arrival. A few things that you will notice here. First, the denizens are out of sorts here, far more lethargic than their counterparts in Zone 1 and 2. Also, they can't seem to focus, being completely addicted to sugar. I mean, I know I am. Also, they don't fear the specters. They've been told by their boss that they're friendly. But I mean, following your boss to the point of death? No, I don't think so. The most notable change is to Zachary, who is currently dressed up as a cat. He still has that annoying laugh, though. He says Pablo needed a break, and that he will be filling in as our guide. Wait a minute, you mean the judge? The judge's name is Pablo. It's a weird name for a cat, but I mean, my cat's name is Bugsy, so I guess I can't judge. Ha! I can't judge. The dorm is where we find Epsilon, the final add-on, its moveset being the only thing that again defines it. The next area has the denizens acting desperate, willing to do anything for sugar. On the workroom floor, we see piles of sugar everywhere and desperate denizens set upon by specters. At first, they seem fearful, but their lust for sugar gets the best of them, and we see something very out of the ordinary. In an effort to protect the sugar, they defeat the specters. Something that Dedan said they could not do way back in Zone 1. But wait, they turn to fight the batter, seeing him as a threat to the sugar, and we see the real reason they could kill specters. They were burnt. Earlier, we saw that there was no difference between the burnt and the specters, so this kind of goes in line with that. Yet the burnt are so crazy they can kill specters. That's dangerous. Zachary arrives tripping over his words. What does he know? The worst part about Zachary is that he knows more about this place than he lets on. At any rate, he's surprised to see sugar here. Sweet stuff is out of place. Deeper into the factory, we discover that the sugar is being manufactured by burning the corpses of denizens. Sugar is the final, fifth secret element. Because without sugar, life would be unbearable. We would all go mad. At this point in the story, I now have enough evidence to construct my theory. I believe that we're currently in someone's body. Someone who is dying. Alright, so here's my proposal. The denizens are all copies of one another, like cells. They struggle to breathe due to the smoke. Case in point, the book in the library states, "I'm running out of oxygen." Smoke gets trapped in the lungs from cigarettes, which is why they're mining it up. Meat is for caloric intake, and the metal taken from that meat is the iron that builds muscles and flesh in the body. The plastic represents the limits of this body due to the inorganic environment outside of it, most likely a hospital. As a cell dies, it is purged from the body, aka purified. As a person dies, this accelerates, which brings me to the final element. Zachary spoke about how he did not expect sugar in the factory, and further, the sugar is coming from the denizens, or the cells that have died. This is a process called ketoacidosis.
There. Do you hear that? Right there. What does it say? It says stay in your coma. I had to dig around in the game's files to listen to this properly. Sure enough, once I got a good listen to it, it says stay in your coma. What does this mean for the batter and the rest of the story? Why don't we move on with the explanation? In the room, things get even more surreal. We start to see into the life of the man behind the batter. Each time we enter the room, it seems as if time has progressed. The boy, who lived in this room, tells his story in a series of notes. How he got sick, and his mother left, leaving him and his father alone. How his illness got worse, preventing him from going outside. And how the father brought the boy gifts, like a comic book and a music box. He brought him company in the form of the man's friends. The boy becomes upset with the heavy-handedness of his father and awaits his mother's return. The three guardians are here, although they don't know who you are, and speak as if you were a child. It's then revealed that the add-ons have been the three guardians the whole time, a reflection of the friends that they once were in the man's life. And reflections is what this world is all about. The judge has been a reflection of the man's cat, an ever-watchful eye in his life. Zachary was the doctor, always there to distress the situation with laughter. The park, a result of giving the man meds that he needed to cope with the stress. Dedan had been a military friend, as seen by his clothes. Enoch was his boss, and the bird had been a companion,
swallowed and killed by one of his cats, who then died. And the man's own savior takes the form of the villain from his son's comic book. But there is a light at the end of this tunnel. The last fight is between the Batter and the Queen, the personification of his wife. The two argue over whose fault it is that their child has become ill and blame each other for abandoning one another, forgetting about their son. By the sounds of it, the son has already passed in the real world, since so much of this conversation takes place in the past tense. After the fight, we see the Queen begin to lose herself as her thoughts travel backwards to the moment of her child's birth. Nearing the end, the Batter must put down his own son. At this point, I knew what was going on. This was not his son. It was only the memory placed in the center of his heart. This was what was keeping him going. But now he had no reason to hold on. His son was dead, and so too must his memory die with him. This fight is one-sided and is over in moments. The last room contains only a switch. The judge catches up to you and charges the player with murder. The judge calls upon the player to put down the madness of the Batter. The Batter, likewise, tells the player that he cannot complete his mission without them. At this point, there are two endings. The official ending has the Batter putting down his poor cat, and in a calm, quiet manner, the Batter flips the switch to the off position. The switch is now off.
The part that ties this all together is the song in the ending credits, which I can't play due to copyright law. It's Somewhere Over the Rainbow, as sung by Judy Garland in the famous MGM film The Wizard of Oz. This world, like The Wizard of Oz, is a reflection of the one that we see of this dying man. People and relationships from real life becoming fantastic creatures of this world. It's a giant case of, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. As someone who grew up very close to death and to the dying, I was okay with what transpired. It brought peace. This may seem cold, but death is an inevitable part of life. Other famous works, such as The Little Prince, have also gone to lengths to teach others how to be okay with death as a part of life. It makes me happy to see the idea of death portrayed in such an abstract and beautiful way. I hope that everyone has the ability to find the same peace in life. My name is the Book of Cosmos. Thank you for joining me.